A man ran out of a burning house. Sometime later, a little boy was running around on an old man's property. The man chased him and fired his rifle. Frozen with fear, the boy stared at him, then turned and ran away. Afterward, the man put up a no trespassing sign, fired his rifle again, and began chopping wood. While doing so, he was told that Wiley Stark had passed away. When he asked what happened, he was told Wiley had died of old age. The following day, the man attended Wiley Stark's funeral. When he returned home, he looked at an old photograph of a woman and then went to bed. That night, he dreamed of her and woke up feeling unwell. He went to the barn and slept beside his horse, telling it he had always thought the horse would die first. He survived the night and woke up the next morning. The following day, he traveled into town by carriage and went to the church, where he met with a priest. The priest asked what had brought him there. Bush said he thought it was time for him to get low. Confused, the priest asked if he was sick. Bush replied that everyone eventually dies, and that he had come to arrange his funeral. He took out a stash of cash and placed it on a chair.
I need a funeral.
For whom?
Me.
The priest said they would help him arrange it if that was truly what he wanted. Bush then asked what would be said at his funeral. The priest admitted he did not know him personally, but had heard some stories. When Bush pressed him about those stories, the priest said it would be gossip and suggested they were not good.
Help you get your affairs in order and arrange a service for you.
The priest then asked if Bush was ready for the next life and whether he had made peace with God. Bush said he had paid the price. The priest replied that forgiveness is free, but it must be asked for. Bush picked up his money and left. Nearby, a young man waiting for the priest with his wife had been listening and was taken by surprise by the conversation.
You want to buy a funeral for you?
Am I not talking right?
I'm sorry, sir. Are you sick?
As Bush was leaving, the young man's wife said she had heard awful things about him while growing up. Later, as Bush passed through town, a man warned him not to use the diner because women and children were inside. Bush stayed quiet, which angered the man, who began throwing stones at him. Bush finally snapped, beat the man, and walked away.
You come around here again, there'll be trouble.
The young man from the church worked for a funeral service company. He told his boss about the incident in town and about Bush's visit to the church. His boss, already frustrated by declining business, saw this as an opportunity. Together, they went to Bush's property but stopped when they saw the no trespassing sign.
Remember, foot in the door, establish trust, and drop the hammer.
The boss ordered the young man to go in and convince Mr. Bush, saying this was his chance to prove himself as a salesman. Nervous, the young man asked his boss to come with him, but the boss refused, telling him he had to face Bush alone if he wanted to succeed. The man agreed and went to Bush's house. As he approached the door, a shot was fired that narrowly missed him, and Bush demanded to know why he was looking through his window. Shocked, the man froze. When Bush stepped closer, he recognized him as the man from the church. The man explained that he had heard Bush was arranging a funeral and said he worked for Quinn Funeral Homes. He told Bush he could help. Bush then invited him inside to share a meal.
You like rabbits? They put things together, see?
Bush cooked, and they sat together at the table. The man assured Bush that when the time came, his company would handle the funeral with respect and care. Bush asked what the man knew about him, saying that for decades, children had come to his house and thrown stones. The man admitted he had heard stories growing up, including one that Bush had killed a man in a fist fight. Bush then asked his name. The man said it was Buddy Robinson. Bush replied that he knew who he was. Buddy left the house and returned to the car only to find his boss asleep inside. Later at the funeral home, Buddy's boss was arguing with a woman who insisted on burying her husband beneath her house. He told her it was not allowed, but the woman refused to accept it. In the middle of their argument, Bush suddenly walked into the funeral home. Buddy then introduced Bush to his boss, Frank Quinn.
Go on in, pleasure.
Frank assured Bush that they would handle his funeral with care and respect. Knowing he was looking for a funeral service, Frank and Buddy showed Bush around the funeral home, pointing out the different kinds of coffins they offered. Bush stopped them and said he did not care about the coffin at all. What he wanted was a party.
What kind of party?
A funeral party. And I want to be there.
You will be, I guarantee you.
I want to be there now.
He then told them that he wanted to be at the party himself. Buddy was confused and explained that a funeral could only happen if the person was deceased. Eager to secure the job, Frank suggested they could host a party for Bush while he was still alive, allowing people to send him off properly.
You can't have a funeral if you're not You know, deceased.
When Frank asked Bush who he wanted to invite, Bush said he wanted everyone there, everyone who had something to say about him. Frank then asked how he expected people to attend when they believed they would be shot for saying something. Bush stood up and walked out.
How do you get people to come tell stories about you that I'm guessing might get them, shot?
Frank followed him, insisting they would find a way to make it work, hoping not to lose the deal. As Bush was leaving, two women entered the funeral home. One of them recognized him, followed him outside, and greeted him. Bush realized it was a woman named Maddie and greeted her in return. He asked when she had moved back, saying he had heard she was away. Maddie told him she had just returned.
How are you?
You look like you always did.
As Frank watched Maddie talking with Bush through the window, he looked surprised and confused, wondering how she knew him. Frank then told Buddy that they were going to give Mr. Bush exactly what he wanted. He said he did not care how strange it was as long as they got the money. Buddy, however, was uneasy about a living man holding a funeral for himself.
If he wants a party with pink balloons on his ears, we're gonna give it to him.
Later, Maddie told Katie about Bush and said she did not see him as a bad guy like everyone else did. She said he had once been very handsome and that many people had deeply misunderstood him.
1,000 years ago, he was the most interesting man I'd ever met.
Get out of here.
He was.
That night, Buddy talked with his wife, Katie, about the funeral. He said it would bring in a lot of money, but he was not sure it was the right thing to do. Katie told him that if Bush wanted it, that was his decision, not Buddy's, and that he should not punish himself over it.
I just don't know if it's right.
Well, is it what he wants?
He says it is.
The next day, Frank and Buddy met with Bush. Frank said he had been thinking about the funeral all night. Buddy then spoke about his parents, explaining that they had died in a car accident and that the funeral home had done a very good job honoring them. He said he sometimes wished his parents had been there to see how well their funeral was handled.
They did the impossible as far as I was concerned.
Back in town, Frank and Buddy prepared to have Bush's picture taken for the party posters. But Bush stopped at the barber to get his hair cut. Frank told him that people recognized him as he was, and that the photo should be taken before the haircut so more people would be likely to come.
It's how people recognize you, sir.
And you want as many people to come as possible, so...
Frank and Buddy helped Bush get ready and had his photograph taken for the funeral. After that, they went to the barber, where Bush had his hair done. They then visited a tailor, and Bush bought a suit. Frank and Buddy told him it looked very nice on him.
Now, where are the shoes?
Normally, people don't wear shoes in a casket.
Bush then asked for a pair of shoes. Frank told him that people do not wear shoes inside a casket, but Bush insisted. Frank agreed and got him a pair of shoes. Frank paid for everything, following Bush's orders to do so. On their way back, Frank asked Bush how he knew Maddie. Bush replied that they had a history from long ago. Frank became angry and began speeding the car. Later on, Maddie, Frank, the priest, and the man from the diner talked about Bush's funeral over dinner. Frank admitted that he was after Bush's money and was willing to do whatever it took to make the funeral happen. Maddie was surprised to learn that Bush even had money at all. The man from the diner strongly opposed the funeral, saying Bush was a dangerous man and that he would have killed him the other day if no one else had been around.
Say what you want to, but if somebody hadn't been there the other day, he'd have killed me, and I guarantee it wouldn't have been the first time either.
Frank joked that the man could attend the funeral and tell everyone that Bush had beaten him up. The man refused, saying he would not attend the devil's funeral for any amount of money, and then walked out. The priest warned Frank that the man had a point. He said they did not truly know what Bush was capable of, and questioned what would happen if Bush was using the funeral to gather everyone together, possibly to harm people.
You don't know what Bush is doing. What if he just wants to get everybody in one place so he can turn his shotgun?
The next day, Maddie saw Bush's funeral poster while walking through town. Frank and Buddy then took Bush to the radio station. There, Bush went on the air and invited everyone to come to his funeral.
How are you today, sir?
I am.
When the journalist asked Bush how he came up with the idea of holding his own funeral party, Bush said he had seen it in a dream. The journalist admitted he had been nervous about the interview because he had heard stories about Bush. Bush asked him what he had heard, and when he hesitated and refused to say it, Bush told him he could say it at his funeral.
I was a little nervous about our interview. I've heard some pretty wild stories.
Well, you come and tell yours.
Thank you, sir.
The journalist asked how long Bush had been living alone. Bush said it had been 40 years. When asked why, Bush replied that the answer might be revealed at his funeral. Bush then announced that there would be a drawing at the funeral. He explained that names would be entered and the winner would receive his 300 acres of land after he died. To be included, people would place a $5 bet, securing a spot in the drawing.
Send it to the Quinn Funeral Home.
For $5?
After hearing him on the radio, Maddie went to visit Bush. Bush introduced her to his mule, Grace, and asked Maddie to walk around the property with him. Maddie agreed, and they began walking together. Bush first took her to the small graveyard where his dogs were buried, saying that someday he would be glad to join them and lie at rest beside them.
I want to lay here with them someday.
As they walked through the woods, Maddie said the land looked beautiful. Bush told her that when people do not interfere, nature knows how to preserve its own beauty. Bush then asked Maddie if she had been sleeping well lately. She admitted that she had not, and he gave her an herb to help her sleep better.
Yeah. Hey, you sleep good?
He then asked her to stay for dinner. Maddie said she did not want to be a burden, but Bush replied that he only had guests every 30 or 40 years, so it would not be a problem. She laughed, agreed, and stayed for dinner. Back at the house, they sat down together for dinner. Maddie remarked that the table was beautiful. Bush asked if she still played the piano. She told him she no longer did, but that she sometimes taught girls. He said he could still hear her music at night sometimes. Maddie replied that the place was very quiet, noticing how silent it felt with no one else around.
I do.
Sure is quiet out here.
Maddie told him that she had tried to write to him many times, but never knew what to say. She explained that she had married a doctor and moved to St. Louis for a while. But after her husband died, she felt lost and eventually moved back home. She then said she was waiting for her time to come. Bush told her to simply live and enjoy her life instead of worrying about death.
Can't wait for anything, Maddie. Close your eyes, hold your breath.
As they spoke, Maddie noticed a photograph on the wall. She walked over and realized it was a picture of her sister from when she was young. Overcome with emotion, she broke down in tears and left immediately. Frank and Buddy became overwhelmed by the amount of money flowing into their funeral service for Bush's drawing. Frank wanted to take some of the money, but Buddy disagreed. Buddy then went to get Bush, and they told him that people were bringing in a lot of money for the drawing. Bush asked what they thought he should do with it.
I don't see why.
Mr. Bush, I didn't mean to imply.
I've sold horses, cars. I've sold watches that were in the inside of my coat. I'm not ashamed of it.
Buddy suggested putting it in the bank, but Frank said he did not trust banks. Bush asked if he could trust Frank, and Frank assured him that he could, saying he was a loyal man. Bush then told him to place all the money inside a casket, explaining that he would come and collect it whenever he wished. He added that he would pay a fair and reasonable price for the funeral service they were arranging.
When the party's over, you name a fair price for what you've done, and we'll settle up. A fair price.
Buddy then drove away with Bush. He asked where Bush wanted to go, and Bush told him he wanted to head north. Buddy nodded and started driving in that direction. Frank began counting the money and registering the names of everyone entered in the drawing. Journalists arrived and started taking pictures of him while he worked. Frank quickly pulled the curtain closed, then continued sorting the money and placing it inside a coffin. Finally, Buddy and Bush arrived at the church and went inside. At first, the priest did not recognize Bush, but when Bush removed his hat, the men recognized one another and exchanged a solemn greeting. Bush then introduced Buddy to the priest, and the three of them sat down to talk.
Yeah. Still standing.
Yeah.
Bush invited the priest to attend the funeral party. The priest asked what Bush wanted him to say there, and Bush told him he was free to say whatever he wished. The priest then asked Buddy to leave so they could speak privately, but Bush said Buddy could stay.
Could you give us a minute?
No, sit still.
What's the matter? You scared to be alone with me?
No, he can hear what's said.
The priest asked whether Bush believed he had done the right thing. Bush said he believed he had. The priest then asked if Bush had ever asked for forgiveness or sought peace for what he had done. Bush said he had built his own prison and lived in it for 40 years, believing that punishment was enough. He then asked the priest if he thought it had truly been enough.
Confessed? Asked forgiveness?
The priest told Bush that they both knew it was not enough. Bush again asked him to come to the funeral party and say whatever he wished, or tell people whatever he felt needed to be said. The priest refused, explaining that he would not do that while Bush was still alive. Bush left angry. The priest then asked Buddy how well he truly knew Bush. Buddy admitted that he did not really know him at all, explaining that his only connection to Bush came through the funeral home. The priest then told him that Bush was the man who had built the church. Buddy was surprised and asked how someone like Bush could have created something so beautiful and lasting.
Maybe he put his soul into it. I don't know.
Buddy then asked the priest what they had been discussing and what Bush was meant to say. The priest replied that it was a matter strictly between Bush and God. On their way back, Buddy asked Bush the same question, but Bush refused to give him an answer.
Ever since the day you came to the funeral home, I don't think anything has happened that you didn't want to happen.
Buddy offered to let Bush stay at his home for the night since it was getting late. Bush refused, saying he had not done such a thing in a very long time. He then asked Buddy to drop him off in the middle of nowhere. Buddy did as he was asked, and Bush stepped out of the car and walked away alone into the darkness.
They keep talking about forgiveness. Ask Jesus for forgiveness.
Bush made his way to a graveyard. Buddy returned to the funeral home and began placing the money into the casket as instructed. While he was doing so, someone broke in. Buddy managed to secure the money, but he was injured during the struggle. Later, Frank arrived, found Buddy hurt, and realized that someone had tried to steal the money. Frank quickly rushed to help him.
Heard some glass breaking. I locked up the casket and then boom.
It was raining heavily when Bush arrived at Maddie's house. He changed out of his wet clothes and sat down. Maddie asked about the photograph of her sister she had seen at his house and demanded that he tell her the truth. Bush explained that years ago he had gone to see Maddie, but instead met her sister, and that was when he fell in love with her.
Can you help who you love?
Maddie reminded him that her sister had been married, but Bush said he could not help how he felt. This angered Maddie. She asked how long it had been going on, and Bush said it had never ended for him. Maddie then asked if he had anything to do with her sister's death. When Bush refused to answer, Maddie broke down and shouted at him to get out of her house. As Bush was leaving, he collapsed. Maddie rushed to help him and told him that he needed to see a doctor. Later, Bush went to the funeral home. Frank told him that someone had tried to steal the money and that Buddy had been injured. Bush asked if Buddy was all right, and Frank said he had treated him and that he was recovering.
Good crack on the head, though.
Is he all right?
Yeah.
You sure?
I was an Army medic. He'll be fine.
Frank then suggested holding the funeral at Bush's house. Bush refused and said he was thinking of calling the whole thing off. Frank pushed back, saying he had put in a great deal of effort, hired people, and made promises of payment. Bush replied that he did not care.
Any damn thing I want.
No.
I say no, you don't say no. Now, goddamn, you send that money back, all right?
The next morning, Frank went to see Buddy and asked what had happened to make Bush change his mind. Buddy told him they had gone to see a priest who refused to attend the funeral. Frank assumed that was the reason. Katie then stepped in and told Frank that her husband was injured and that all Frank seemed to care about was the money. She said Buddy needed rest. Frank apologized and left.
What?
My husband has his head bashed in, and all you care about is this party.
That's not how it is, Katie.
Frank went to see the priest. The priest assumed he had been sent by Bush, but Frank explained that Bush now wanted to cancel the funeral after their meeting. Frank pleaded with the priest to come and speak at the funeral, saying he had invested a great deal of money and was relying on the event to recover it. The priest refused. Frank insisted he would stay until the priest agreed, admitting he had taken out a large loan from the bank in hopes that the deal would pay off.
He came to see me after he'd been here. Wants to cancel the party.
Back at the funeral home, Buddy went to place more money into the casket and realized it was gone. Alarmed, he immediately went to Bush's property, where he found Bush exhausted and stuck after doing heavy labor. Buddy offered to help, but Bush said he only needed to sit for a moment. Buddy then told him everything that had happened. Bush asked if Buddy thought Frank had run off with the money, but Buddy said he did not know. Bush asked what Buddy wanted to do next. Buddy said he still wanted to hold the funeral if Bush was willing. After a moment, Bush agreed.
Well, do it if you want to.
Later, Frank and the priest visited Buddy. Buddy asked Frank if he had moved the money. Frank said that he had, and Buddy questioned why he had not mentioned it earlier. Frank brushed it off, saying he had simply forgotten. He then thanked the priest for agreeing to come.
Free will is not all it's cracked up to be.
The day of the funeral arrived, and people began gathering from all around town. Large crowds showed up, and everyone worked together to prepare the stage and set up the area. Bush prepared himself by lighting a cigarette and sipping whiskey. The priest went to see him. Bush thanked him for coming and said he planned to tell everything. But if he could not, he asked the priest to speak the truth for him. The priest listened quietly, then left without saying a word.
I want it said so. Please, sir.
Frank stepped onto the stage and delivered the opening speech. He thanked everyone for coming to what he called a one-of-a-kind event, a funeral being held for a man who was still alive. He praised Buddy Robinson for making the funeral possible and for his hard work at Quinn Funeral Company. Frank said that everyone had heard many different stories about Mr. Bush, but that today they would finally hear Bush's story directly from him.
Many of you have heard stories about Mr. Bush, but today I'm told that we're going to hear another kind of story.
Bush then walked onto the stage alongside the priest. The priest spoke first, saying he had met Bush 40 years earlier when Bush came to his church as a troubled man. He recalled that during his time there, Bush had built the most beautiful church he had ever seen, stone by stone, without asking for praise or recognition. Bush thanked the priest quietly, then stepped forward and took the stage on his own.
I had to go clear to Illinois to find somebody who had anything good to say about me.
Bush stood before the crowd and began speaking his truth. He said he was not there to seek forgiveness from God or from anyone else, despite what people believed. He explained that he had carried what he had done for many years, holding on to it until the weight of it made him sick. When he saw Maddie in the crowd, his voice faltered, and he paused for a moment before forcing himself to continue. He admitted that he had fallen in love with a married woman and that she had fallen in love with him as well. They planned to run away together and start a new life far from town. Bush waited for her at the place they had agreed to meet, but she never came. After waiting for a long time, filled with doubt and fear, he went to her house.
Her husband answered the door. He had blood on him.
Her husband opened the door with blood on his hands. Bush struck him and ran upstairs, desperate to reach her. Before he could help her, a kerosene lamp hit the wall and exploded. Her husband jumped onto Bush's back, and the two fought briefly as the fire began to spread. In the chaos, Bush realized the house was burning around them.
Whew, that I was on fire.
He called out to her using the nickname he had given her, Mary Lou, and reached out to save her, but he could not. He did not remember exactly how he escaped or how he jumped out the window, only that somehow he survived. In that moment, he lost the only love of his life, and everything else he had hoped for died with her.
I tried to help her up.
Bush told the crowd that the one thing he knew for certain was that he did not leave her there on purpose. He said he had lived every day since with that truth and that pain. He ended by asking for forgiveness for what he had done, lowering his head as the crowd stood in silence.
I would like forgiveness now, if possible.
The funeral ended, and the crowd slowly dispersed. Maddie went to Bush and cried on his shoulder. Together, they spoke quietly, remembering her and imagining what she might have looked like if she had lived until now.
Her hair would be white.
Sometime later, Felix Bush died for real. This time, only a few people gathered. The priest spoke about him and said that wherever Bush was now, he hoped he had finally found peace at last.